Welcome to your daily dose of theological German, where a sentence a day keeps the dissertation detractors away, especially if you're doing anything with proverbs and intertextuality right now, because that's the area of research that we are reading in this book, installment number 8 of Tora Hermeneutics. So this sentence starts with this definite article, which goes with this noun here, which I'm going to translate something like considerations or reflections. And then you have this adjective modifying it in the middle. And that's pretty characteristic in German. Adjectives will split the specifier from its noun, and that's characteristic of single adjectives like this, but also when you start loading those adjectives up in the overloaded types of constructions. It's just always good to recognize that that's just a normal pattern in German. It's just that in the overloaded cases, it's harder to find where the noun went because it's usually so much further down the sentence. But in any case, here we just have the one adjective, and real quick, it's just a compound word, and it is going to mean something like directions, Richtung, of research. And now you have, because you're using this definite article, you kind of wonder, is it referring to something in the world vaguely that we should all know about, or is it referring to something that's already been discussed somewhere in this author's work? And I'm going to suggest that it's the latter, because I think what he's actually referring to is the previous section where he did a review of research. And I think that's what he's kind of talking about here, because otherwise, trying to make sense of why this is adjectively modified this way, right? So you have this adjective, research direction considerations. The research direction considerations, I think what he's referring to is his own consideration of the directions in research on this topic. And so that means you're going to just say something like, the review of research that preceded in this book, okay? So the review of research has, and here you have an auxiliary verb, haben, has indicated. This is a participle, and that's appropriate because it complements that auxiliary to make a kind of perfect tense, has indicated. And then you have this adverb, which it could be an adverb. I mean, it's not going to end up being that, zugleich. It could mean simultaneously, and so it could be that he's going to say that it indicated two different things simultaneously, or more than one thing simultaneously. But this author is famous for using these, I don't know about famous, but in these episodes that I've been tracking anyways, I've noticed that he really uses these kinds of expressions, these adverbs, a lot as sort of discourse markers. And so he's actually just presenting this as something to keep in mind in consideration of what he just said in the previous few sentences. And so you might want to actually just put that up front in the sentence and say something like, at the same time, the review of research has indicated or demonstrated. What has it demonstrated? That in the various directions of research, so now the same compound word is showing up here as a noun, so that in the various directions of research of Old Testament studies, but, or you might want to say and, but aber has a more slightly disjunctive force to it, but the point is it's adding this to Old Testament research, so this is actually just an offset phrase, it's not a full clause. So the research directions in Old Testament studies and also, or but also, of Egyptology. This clause begins with an adverb, something like finally or ultimately, a comparable empirical finding. So you can see again that you have two adjectives which have split the noun here from its specifier up here. And so just keep that in mind, because when you get to those overloaded adjective constructions, that's the first thing you got to recognize is what's the noun that goes with the specifier. And so it's just good to see that pattern in German with all kinds of adjectival modifications. So here we have, again, in a subordinate clause, the verb is at the end, and once again it is werden, as we saw in the previous episode. So we're dealing here with a passive construction, but because it's werde, it's actually in the past tense, and so you're going to say was investigated. So let's go ahead and do the whole sentence from the beginning, just to make it nice and clear. The review of research has at the same time indicated or demonstrated that in the various research directions of Old Testament studies, but also of Egyptology, ultimately a comparable empirical finding was investigated.